I spent 30 days with absolutely no social media on my phone. No Instagram, no X, no scrolling, nothing. And within about a week, something strange started to happen to my mind. And when I looked into it later, it turns out that scientists have observed the same thing time and time again in people who quit using social media. By the end of this video, I'll show you those psychological studies on what happens to people when they quit social media, and I'll explain to you why I think this is the biggest obstacle to prayer or having any sort of meaningful interior life at all. Now, the average person spends about 2.5 hours per day on social media, not, 2.5 hours on using your maps or your Gmail or whatever else, but actually just social media, just scrolling, just nonsense. And that's 2.5 hours per day. Remember that number because I'm going to come back to that later. Now, this leads to a bunch of different problems. There's attention fragmentation. We can't focus on anything. There's these endless dopamine feedback loops. And worst of all, we're rarely ever alone with our thoughts. And all of this makes it pretty much impossible to have a meaningful prayer life because prayer requires silence and reflection requires mental stillness. And this is something that I've struggled with for a very long time. I'm always on my phone. I'm always checking notifications. I'm always seeing who commented on my video. I'm always seeing who commented on my Instagram reel, all of this nonsense. And I thought, this is enough. This is terrible. I have to stop doing this. So I decided that for 30 days, I am going to have no social media on my phone and we'll see what happens. Now, to accomplish this, I didn't just delete the apps from my phone because I knew that I'm very weak. Okay, I fall to temptation very easily. So I realized I can't have a way out of this. So I couldn't just delete the apps because I'll go back later and just re-download them. So what I did was I used an app called Shift, which you can get on your phone, you can get on your laptop, you can get on your iPad, any device, and it takes away these apps and blocks these apps from your browser so that you can't possibly access any social media. But you still can use all of the things you would need for your day-to-day life, like your email, your maps, all of these functional things, but it takes away the distracting things that are literally just going to waste your time. So Shift has this 30-day program called Rehab where you once you turn it on, you literally cannot turn it off. You can't undo it until the 30 days are up. And so that was kind of scary for me, but it was like you need to do something drastic because these phones are literally designed to act against your will, to compromise your will so that you can't possibly resist using your phone. Because the more you use your phone, the more money they make from advertising, the more products you're going to buy and all that stuff. So they literally bake into these phones addictive qualities so that you are literally unable to resist using your phone. So I had to use something drastic like Shift, and I'm really glad that I did because otherwise this video would not be possible because I would have just caved immediately. Now, I thought that initially I would feel, horrified at not having my phone. I thought that initially I would feel really bad. I'd be really nervous. I'd want to check things, and then eventually I'd get more comfortable. But what I found actually was the opposite. I was initially very comfortable, and I thought this is great. I have nothing to check. There, even if I wanted to, I can't do anything. So this is awesome. But then as a couple days started to pass, I was like, wait, like I kind of, what if I want to like upload something, or what if I have something to say on X, or what if there's something going on X that would make a really good YouTube video that I could respond to, or I don't know, stupid stuff like that started popping up in my head. And I was like, "Oh no, like I don't have this." And so it started off calm and then I became very anxious about it. But then something interesting started happening about a week in. And most interestingly, scientists have actually studied this in other people as well. For example, the University of Pennsylvania did a study where they limited participants' social media use to 10 minutes per platform. So 10 minutes of Facebook, 10 minutes of Instagram, 10 minutes of X, whatever. That was the maximum. And what they found was that people's depression went down, their anxiety went down, their feelings of loneliness went down, and overall, they were just much happier people after this experiment. Another study forced participants to quit Facebook for 4 weeks, and they found that they similarly felt much more happy, lower anxiety, more time spent with friends and family, just overall a better life without Facebook. But the most interesting result wasn't about mood, it was about attention. Research shows, maybe not surprisingly, that when you remove social media, your attention span improves dramatically. And as time goes on, away from using social media and away from having these things on your phone, you check your phone less often and your focus kind of returns. And the reason for this is that when you do have these apps on your phone, these notifications that you often get trigger a dopamine cycle or dopamine loop. So you get a notification, you click on it, and it's something good and now you're happy, and then you want to check your phone again to see, is there another notification that's going to make me happy? And it becomes compulsive because it's a chemical reward for something you're doing in your physical life, and so you want that reward again and again and again, and after a while you don't realize that this is actually controlling you and that this behavior is actually something you're not choosing, it's just compulsive. So when you stop that and that cycle no longer gets to be rewarded, then you stop having that incentive to check your phone as often. And this is what I noticed happened to me. My mind became quieter. Normally, my brain is a disaster. I have 40 different things that I'm thinking about, and I'm like, doing something, and I remember something else I have to do. And I'm like, okay, I better do that now before I forget. So I go to do that, but then I forget the first thing I was doing, and it's very frustrating and it's very annoying, especially for my wife. I'm so sorry, but that's just the reality. But when I did this experiment, this 30 days, especially after about 7 days, especially maybe into week two, I started to feel like my mind was just much more clear, and I didn't feel like I had, a bunch of different tabs open in my head and I had different things I was thinking about. I was actually just like, no, I'm doing this and then I'm going to do that next. And I'm able to remember things a lot better. And it was just really, really strange because I always, chalked it up to like, oh, I'm getting old. That's why I'm forgetting things. But actually, no, it's just because I'm on my phone too much. And the best thing about this was that I realized I was having so much more time. 2.5 hours a day is the average. Some people spend more. I certainly at times have spent more on my phone than 2.5 hours just on social media, scrolling nonsense. You don't realize what you're doing. But even that, just that 2.5 hours a day, the average person spends on social media doing nonsense, that adds up. I mean, throughout the year, I told you to remember that number, 2.5 hours. Throughout the year, that adds up to 912 and a half hours. Now, in days, that's 38 days. So that's an extra month, more than an extra month of time that you could have just by not having these apps on your phone. And you could fill that time doing things that you've been wanting to do. We all have these things we want to do in our life that we're like, oh yeah, I want to do that, but I don't have time. Ah man, if only I had time, I could get around to that. Or there's this business I want to start, or there's this YouTube channel I want to start, or something like that. What I noticed was that not having these apps on my phone allowed for time to actually do those things. You could write, you could read. I was filling a lot of this time with prayer. So I was like, yeah, I used to not think I'd had time for a rosary every day. And there you go. Now I do. I have plenty of time. In fact, 2.5 hours a day, that's more than all four sets of mysteries every single day that you could be doing. You could do it twice, in fact, and you would still have time left over if you did not have social media on your phone. So also during this time, I read two books and I listened to a third one, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes. I read Matt Fradd's Jesus Our Refuge. I read some works by St. Ambrose, which were absolutely incredible. Highly recommend reading St. Ambrose's works. And I also listened to Jesus and the Jewish Roots of Mary by Dr. Brant Petrie. Very good book. All of those books are excellent. And what I realized also was not only did I have more time for prayer, but I also just was better at prayer, not having all of these thoughts in my head, not thinking about notifications I needed to check, and just having the tendency removed of checking notifications, having that dopamine feedback loop removed from my existence, just made me better at praying and better at quieting my mind in those moments and focusing on, meditating on the mysteries of the rosary, for example, which was just beautiful. And this makes perfect sense. This is actually like everything I'm saying here is very ancient knowledge, very old knowledge, not anything new happening here. This video is actually not presenting any new information. But Saint Teresa of Avila said this, back in, I believe she was around in the 1500s. She said that prayer is nothing else than a close sharing between friends. And she often emphasized the importance of silence in your mind, having quiet moments during the day, because you can't have that moment of sharing between friends, between you and God, without having silence. And like I said, this is nothing new, but this is something that I realized in a very real way through experience rather than just through head knowledge during this 30 days. And it made me realize something else that I didn't ever think about before. And that is that social media trains us to form habits that are directly contrary to the contemplative life. Social media trains us for speed, novelty, stimulation, and comparison, among other things. And these are things that just do not work with a contemplative life, with a life that is prayerful. Because rather than speed, prayer requires stillness. Rather than novelty, prayer requires patience. St. John of the Cross says that God's first language is silence. And if silence is where God speaks, then constant noise that we have through our phones and other devices is one of the greatest spiritual obstacles of our time. So look, everything was going great. I was having a great time during this 30 days. My wife was pregnant at the time. She has since delivered the baby prematurely. He's in the NICU. Please pray for him. He's doing great though. So please don't stress out. He's doing great. But, this was a time when I should have, this was a good time to take this time away from social media and be present with my wife and our, at the time, unborn baby, and just have a life that is geared towards preparing for this child, so that he comes into a household that is spiritually and emotionally and mentally a little bit more mature, perhaps. So that extra time was really nice. But I did find, so I mentioned earlier that first week was a little bit kind of weird getting used to things, and then around 7 days I started to settle into this kind of new routine. But what I found was that interestingly, around 21 days, around the third week mark, I actually wanted my social media back. And I started like trying to find ways around it. And like I said earlier, there's no way to get around shift. I tried to find ways. I really did try to find ways around it. I was like, what if I can, I don't know, try to find some way to switch it off for now? What if I uninstall it? There's no way to undo it. It's hopeless. So, but I did find around the third week mark, I started to squirm a little bit, which was kind of weird because I thought by that point I'd be over it. But I think I kind of missed some of the old habits that I had. And I started to try to find a way around it. But then I realized, okay, you're not going to get around this. Stop it, relax, and just settle back in. And then once I did that, it was okay. But man, it was just great. Having it just felt like my brain had more space. Like there wasn't a billion things going on. There wasn't anything I needed to be doing at any given time, something I should be checking or whatever. It was just like a deep breath, calmness in my brain. I loved it. It was great. I can't wait to do it again. And it's really interesting that the studies that we looked at earlier had the same effects on people, like, improved memory, improved mood, less anxiety, less depression. Overall, just a better life without these things, it seems. Now, look, I'm not saying everybody has to go and delete all of their social media apps forever. I think that some good actually does come from social media. In fact, many, if not most, of the recent conversions we've been seeing to Catholicism, which has been exploding, by the way, is probably a lot to do with social media. Channels like this one, hopefully, Instagram accounts that are spreading the faith, all of this great stuff going on the internet that is drawing these people to the Catholic faith. So certainly a lot of good can come from social media. But I do think that most of us underestimate what constant stimulation does to our brains. And sometimes, especially during this time of Lent, we all think about extra things we need to be taking on and doing, like, I need to pray more, I need to give more to charity. And these are good things that you should be doing. Please do those things. But I think also the most powerful thing we could do is sometimes to just have some more silence. Because when all of that noise disappears, then something else finally has a chance to speak. What about you? Have you ever tried quitting social media? How did it go? Let me know in the comments. Now, a lot of what I've discussed here comes from Carmelite spirituality. I talked about St. Teresa of Avila. I talked about St. John of the Cross. These are both huge figures in the history of the Carmelite order. And if you know anything about the Carmelites, you probably know about the scapular, which is this thing right here. And I have a video that goes into the history of the scapular and some highly evidential miracles associated with it. If you want to watch that video, I highly recommend it. You can watch that by clicking this right here. If you want to support the work we're doing here, which I really appreciate, and get access to members-only perks, including hours of members-only content, click this link here. I'll see you over there. God bless. Cheers.